दोस्तों, we have a very special guest today, Mr. Pankaj Batra sir. पंकज जी, वेलकम टू जीटी लॉग पॉडकास्ट।
थैंक यू।
मेरे साथ मेरे को-होस्ट और मेरे को-फाउंडर ध्रुव जैन जी भी हैं। ध्रुव जैन जी इस पॉडकास्ट में एज एन एक्सपर्ट भूमिका निभा रहे हैं। सबसे पहले मैं सर के बारे में बताता हूँ। सर अभी सीनियर एडवाइजर IRADe जो कि इंटीग्रेटेड रिसर्च एंड एक्शन फॉर डेवलपमेंट एज ए संस्था में काम कर रहे हैं। उसके पहले सर चेयरपर्सन भी रहे हैं, सेंट्रल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी अथॉरिटी में रहे हैं, और COP और चीफ ऑफ पार्टी भी रहे हैं SARI जो USAID का प्रोजेक्ट है उसमें भी। सर आपका लगभग 35 से 40 साल का एक्सपीरियंस रहा है आफ्टर कमिंग आउट फ्रॉम द कॉलेज इन 1981 फ्रॉम IIT BHU। इस 35 से 40 साल की जर्नी को थोड़ा सा अपने बारे में थोड़ा सा विस्तार से बताएं, क्रोनोलॉजिकल ऑर्डर में पहले क्या किया, कैसे क्या रहा। तो थोड़ा सा मुझे लगता है कि लिसनर को आपकी जर्नी और माइलस्टोन से भी थोड़ा सा सीखने को मिलेगा कि क्या क्या आपने किया और हाउ यू हैव लैंडेड अप इन मे बी making your professional journey so illustrative or maybe very visibly available for everyone.
Yeah. So to be precise, it's 41 years in the power sector, and before that, about almost 2 years in Bajaj Electricals. Because when you pass out of engineering, then you have various aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was passing out, then I gave this UPSC exam, which is for Indian Engineering Services, the Combined Engineering Services exam. So usme you can get into the engineering side of many things, like the Central Power and Power Engineering Service, Central Water Engineering Service, the railways, and many others, government departments, all for the government, central government. So when I gave this, one of the things is that people told me, I didn't know too much, but people told me that these central services are very, reputed, and it's good to work in these. And of course, it benefits the population at large. So it's as compared to a private company where you work for that company, which is jahan pe scope is for that part only, whereas there's a much wider aspect when you look at from work in the government.
Mm-hmm.
So I did give that exam and I got through. And my first choice was railways, of course, which everyone's choice is railways because you get a lot of benefits in terms of free passes and maybe throughout life. But I didn't get that. This was my second choice because I was electrical engineer, so Central Power Engineering Service. Although I didn't know too much about it, then I asked some of my relations. One of my relations was a member in the Central Electricity Authority, which is the Central Power Engineering Service.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me it's good. It's you make policies for the power sector in India. So I took that. Before that, up till that, because the UPSC exam takes about 1.5 years for the results to come. They have evaluation and then physical evaluation. So in the meantime, I worked in Bajaj Electricals in Mumbai, where I was at that time. That was also a good experience still, but that was related to appliances and lights, which Bajaj Electricals produces. So I was in quality control over there. So when this came, another thing that prompted me to join the government is that at that point of time we didn't have our own house in Mumbai. So whereas the government was giving us a house, right at the start in Mumbai, and Mumbai at that level is very difficult. It's pretty expensive to buy a house over there. It was for everyone. So that's another thing that prompted me to join that. And then I stayed there for about 8 years in this as a system operator. Now, system operator is one which does the supervision of the grid. That was the western region, Mumbai. They have 5 regions. We've got 5 regions in India: northern, southern, western, eastern, and northeastern. So in the western region, which was one of the high demand regions, which is Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Goa. So you had a 24/7 control room in which you supervised system operations, and it's actually a specialized job. Now, of course, there's a separate organization which is called Grid Controller of India,
GCI,
which is branched out of so many of the functions have branched out into specialist organizations from CA. CA was the apex technical body when it started in 1975, and then you have NTPC, which evolved out of it, National Thermal Power Corporation, the NHPC, then the financing side, Power Finance Corporation, and later from the Power Grid Corporation. The Power Grid Corporation, POSOCO, which is Power System Operation Company, then branched out of Power Grid Corporation, and then later it came to be called the Grid Controller of India. So I was system operator, the regional system operator in the Western region. And from there, I wanted to be in the field. So this is, of course, a field, but you're not actually seeing machines. You are dealing with the power system. So I wanted to go to the field and see how things work. So I got an opportunity to go on deputation from the Government of India to a hydro plant in Bhutan, Chuka Hydropower Corporation, where Government of India gives a combination of loan and grant to Bhutan for setting up hydropower stations, and the excess power from those stations comes to India, is bought by India, by various states. So that was, so I worked for about 8 years initially as a system operator, and then I worked for about 4.5 years in Chuka Hydropower Corporation, initially in the operation of the power station, and also, I was executive engineer in operation, there was executive engineer maintenance, but we used to look after each other's things the more if one of them was on leave. So I was looking after the operation and maintenance, which consisted of the dam, the powerhouse, and the switchyard. So what I learned in those 4 years, because of being on the field, I think I would not learn in 15 years if I was sitting only in office. So that was real knowledge gain for me, and I think a lot of that I used in my future, where I was responsible for making policies and regulations and things like that, standards, electric technical standards. So I was there for 4.5 years. When I came back, I was posted in the grid management division. The same thing what I was doing as a system operator for the Western region, but now you're looking at India as a whole, where you were supervising the system operators in the 5 regions. So that was also learning experience, and from grid management I also saw the commercial aspects. I was in financial and commercial appraisal. That was of course later, but from grid management, after grid management division, I applied for the Central Regulatory Commission was formed in about 1999, I think, or so. That was a regulator, and I applied for that, and I got selected as Chief of Engineering in the Central Regulatory Commission. That was again a different aspect of things, because this was totally technical, whereas in the Central Regulatory Commission you made regulations which are not only technical but also commercial, financial. So that was again an experience which I learned a lot, and I was there for about 4 years, and then I came back to the CA, because that was a deputation. You go to deputation, you come back to the parent department, and after that I was looking after grid management. Then we started a regulatory division, regulatory affairs division in CA, because regulators were now independent entities, and they sort of sought comments from CA, being the technical body, on various aspects, regulations. So I started that, and then later I was looking after financial and commercial appraisal, which is the financial and commercial aspects of hydro plants, of transmission lines, because by that time the generating stations competitive bidding had started. So you don't have to determine the tariff. It was determined through competition. But transmission was still regulated, and hydropower stations was also not through competitive bidding. So we did calculations for about what the tariff of these stations should be, and of course many other things like the bidding documents I prepared at that time along with the team. Of course, everything you do in the government is with the team. So that's from there. Of course, I became member planning and then chairperson for a short time. So member planning, I was for a relatively long time, where we did the planning of the power system as a whole in India. That is the generation planning and transmission planning, and the finances required for setting up more power stations for the next 20 years. So that's demand forecasting, and then planning how much generation, how it can meet the demand by what type of generation, coal-based or gas-based or hydro-based or renewables. And renewables, by that time, the thrust was in renewables. So we had a strong target for renewables. And the idea was to increase the percentage of renewables, which would automatically reduce the percentage of coal-based generation. So we took out that National Electricity Plan, which is the planning. Before that, the Electric Power Survey, the 19th Electric Power Survey. Now, of course, you have the 20th one, which is there, the latest one. And the National Electricity Plan we took out was in 2018, whereas the National Electricity Plan, which came out after that, is in 2023. That's the latest. So that's how my journey till in CA was. And after CA, then I wanted to keep working. So there was an offer from USAID on cross-border trading in electricity under a program which is called the SARI program, SARI EI, South Asia Regional Initiative in Energy Integration, where we want to integrate the neighboring nations in South Asia for beneficial trade of power both ways. So at that also we had I was chairman of a committee for demand creation, because at one time when this power market came, a lot of private sector generating stations came, and there was about 30,000. They came so much that from a position of shortage we became a position of surplus. So we had 30,000 megawatts at one time of coal-based stations which were stranded. They were not being used. So the government created a committee saying how to increase demand, how to create demand. So the recommendations we gave was, of course, make in India, that we should have that. So that will increase the demand of industries, and also sell power to Bangladesh and Nepal, because their own cost of generation was much higher than ours. So they would stand to gain also by getting cheaper power, and their shortages would also be removed, and our generating stations would also get utilized. So that would reduce the non-performing assets, because a lot of banks had lent money and they felt that burnt their fingers. So it was a win-win situation for both India as well as South Asian countries. So that actually started and raised my interest, and therefore after I retired from the CA, I got the offer for heading this project, which is
as a chief of party.
As chief of party of the USAID program. So chief of party, but through a think tank, which is IRADe. Now, because there are many more things many more people are required. So along with me, I had a team of about 10 people, 10 to 12 people, and we had three things about. One is three objectives. One was harmonization of regulations, because the regulations in each of these countries are different, policies and regulations. And if they're not in sync with each other, then maybe one country wants to import, but the other country doesn't have that policy or regulation. So these need to be harmonized. The other is advancing transmission interconnections. So creating transmission lines depending on should it be DC, high voltage direct current, or a high voltage alternating current, or radial only.
Hmm.
So depending on the grid codes of these countries, that had to be done. And the third was creation of a electricity market. So market is efficient. In India, we'd already created a power exchange in 2008, and when I was in CRC. No, the first exchange came 2008. I joined 2009, but we took out the power market regulations, which had regulations for regulating the power market. So creation of a power market was the third objective of this SARI program. So I think this was there for 4 years, from 2018 when I retired to 2022 when the program ended. And I think we contributed quite a lot because the trade increased substantially. These other countries started taking part in the power exchange in India. And the trade doubled from between 2012 to 2018. In 6 years, it doubled with these countries. So a lot of, and I think, one of the main things we felt at that time was that it's just that people didn't know the advantages because they had not heard of a power exchange outside the other countries. And in India, there was so much of benefits which accrued. So we brought this to the notice of these countries, and they started getting into that. And after that, of course, after this program ended, I still continue as part-time as senior advisor in IRADe, where we are doing 2 projects presently. One is on the BBINS region. Now, BBINS is South Asia basically, minus Pakistan and Afghanistan, but including Myanmar and Thailand. So it's in line with the government of India's look eastward policy, and here also it was preparing the BBINS interconnection master plan for interconnection of transmission connections, so that more trade could happen. And the report is, we finished our portion, but there's another partner, Manitoba Hydro International, which is doing modeling. That is also going to get over, and then we will submit the consolidated report maybe in a few months. The other one which we are doing currently is capacity building of the states in collaboration with CA. So CA wants this, the laws, regulations, policies which are made by the central government or by CA or by the CRC, regulatory commissions, but the nuances of which maybe some of the states don't understand, so they can't fully use these efficiently. So in order for them to see to use these efficiently, we are doing a region-wise capacity building program. We've already done one for the northern region in Lucknow on 2nd, 3rd July. The second one we are doing on 17th, 18th October for eastern region. And then we'll do northeastern region in November, and January and February we'll do western and southern region. So in that way, and then we'll have webinars for on certain specific topics which the states want more light to be thrown on.
More capacity buildings in the states.
Right, and so that this would end in April end. And of course, there's an ongoing exercise. We also bid for other projects. Let's see how things carry on.
Very nice.
I also do some independent assignments for other than this, because I'm about 60% committed to IRADe, and other time I can use for my independent assignments. So that's as at present.
Great. Very extensive experience said. But maybe I think हम पूरे experience को maybe I think one specific flow of information अगर हम उसको और discuss कर सकें. For example, जैसे हम पावर प्लांट से लेकर के हाउस होल्ड तक की जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का जो ट्रैवल है, जो जर्नी है, उसको हम लोग किस हिसाब से देखते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल इफ आई टेल यू मे बी आई थिंक माय क्वेश्चन मोर क्लियरली. सो जब हम लोग पावर सेक्टर की बात करते हैं तो बहुत सारे पैरामीटर्स हैं सर्टेनली, जहाँ पे पावर जनरेशन हो रही है, फिर वो ट्रांसमिशन है, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है, फिर हाउस होल्ड है जहाँ पे एक्चुअली में डिमांड क्रिएशन का काम है. और इस प्रोसेस में द जर्नी दैट वी हैव सीन, जैसे पहले स्टेट स्पेसिफिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम होता था, स्टेट आपस में उनकी डिस्कॉम होती थी, फिर आपस में उनकी रिक्वायरमेंट के हिसाब से वो बार्टर मॉडल पे काम करते थे। फिर धीरे से जब 1998 के आसपास में फिर रिफॉर्म्स हुए, और जैसे आपने बताया कि CRC का उस समय या रेगुलेशंस का गठन हुआ। फिर ये देखा गया कि वन नेशन वन ग्रिड का कॉन्सेप्ट आया, तो उससे जो डिपेंडेंसी है या रिडेंडेंसी है उसको और ऑप्टिमाइज किया गया। तो उस तरीके से हम लोग बहुत सारे पैरामीटर्स और स्टेक होल्डर्स भी देखते हैं पूरे सिस्टम में। तो अगर वो पावर सेक्टर के बारे में जानना चाहें कि हाँ मतलब एक तरीके से अगर सिस्टमैटिक या स्ट्रक्चर तरीके से अगर एक्सप्लेन करें, तो जैसे अगर कोल पावर प्लांट्स हैं तो सर्टेनली मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कोल भी इन्वॉल्व होगी, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ पावर इन्वॉल्व है। पावर प्लांट जहाँ लग रहे हैं वहाँ पे मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ इन्वायरमेंट एंड फॉरेस्ट भी इन्वॉल्व है, और भी मिनिस्ट्रीज इन्वॉल्व हैं, तो मिनिस्ट्री इन्वॉल्व है। फिर उसके बाद में जनरेशन साइट्स इन्वॉल्व हैं, फिर लोड डिस्पैच सेंटर्स इन्वॉल्व हैं, फिर ERCs या CA इन्वॉल्व है। फिर आप देखिए कितनी रेगुलेटरी कमीशंस भी हैं, जैसे सेंट्रल में CRC है, फिर स्टेट में है, फिर JERC भी है। इतनी सारी रेगुलेटरी कमीशंस भी हैं इस पूरे सेक्टर को रिफॉर्म करने के लिए। तो मतलब अगर इस सेक्टर को सही तरीके से एक्सप्लेन करें स्ट्रक्चर तरीके से, तो व्हाट आर द मे बी स्टेक होल्डर्स जिनको ध्यान में रखना है, और कैसे स्मूथली जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी सप्लाई है वो फ्रॉम पावर प्लांट टू होम पहुंच सकती है या पहुंच रही है आज के टाइम में।
राइट, ओके, या सो सी इफ यू कंपेयर टू, आपने सपोज एक डीजल जनरेटर घर में लगाया
जी,
वो इट्स अ स्मॉल थिंग, यू फीड इट, देयर इज नथिंग इन्वॉल्वड इन बिटवीन, but the cost of that is high and emissions are there. Now if you want to have a whole ecosystem of power generation at efficiently and transmitting and transmission and distribution, then the best place to locate coal based plants are where the coal mines are. Those are called pithead plants.
Correct, sir.
So that's the cheapest way of generation, because you don't have to transport coal. वहाँ से transmission lines power ले जाते हैं through transmission system to the load centers, which is cities and industries and things like that. So you have there's a big system if you want to generate power efficiently, cheaply, and जैसे coal based stations which are far away from cities, so pollution वहाँ पे ज़्यादा होती है, but it's far away from the cities. So this ecosystem is actually consists of interaction with a lot of organizations, as you said. You know, there's specialist organizations in generation, in transmission, in distribution, and then and of course, you know, there are many other things involved, which is Bureau of Energy Efficiency, for example, which makes sure that each of these sectors are efficient, each of these areas are efficient, and of course there are Power Finance Corporation which finances this. So there are a lot of stakeholders, because this is infrastructure, and which the government wants to see that, energy is the lifeline of a country. If you are energy secure, your country can develop a lot. So it needs specialist organizations in various fields. It's such a large, massive infrastructure. If you want to satisfy the energy needs or electricity needs of the entire nation, then it has to be generated in bulk. So and it's cheaper and more efficient. So you have to have, I mean, it's a collective. There's so many. It's like the cogs of a wheel. You know, if you have all these in place, then the wheel will move properly. So you must have generation people who are responsible for generating efficiently. You must have transmission people who transmit efficiently, and you must have distribution system which distributes efficiently. So there are standards of performance of licensee जहाँ competition नहीं है. Generation में तो there's competition now. So they have to they will lose if they are not efficient, because there's a thing called availability based tariff, where one component of your charge is based on how much your plant is available. अगर ज़्यादा out रहेगा या trip हो जाएगा, then your availability will reduce and they'll get compensated to a lesser extent. So there's also provision for incentive. एक nominal value से अगर ऊपर they are available, they'll get incentives also. But if they are below that, they are penalized. So वहाँ पे competition में all these standards are set. Transmission licensee is there's not competition strictly in the sense that two people don't put up lines in the same place competitively. Competition transmission में बाद में इसमें ऐसे आया कि you design the transmission system and you see who can build that and operate the transmission as the cheapest cost. So that's how transmission. But वो line एक ही रहेगी, एक identified line है which is identified by CA and power grid. So CA is there's a National Committee on Transmission which conducts these कि कहाँ से कहाँ line बननी है, कौन सा substation बनना है, किस voltage level का बनना है. So there are standards of performance of transmission licensees that if you earlier it was 98% availability, below which you would be penalized, above which you will be incentivized, and now that has increased. As time passes, you make the standards more stringent. So that's transmission. And distribution is something which is basically with the state's hands. So distribution it depends on the state regulator, how they regulate the distribution companies. So if they are if the regulator is tough, all these people will perform. If the regulator if the standards are not very tough, then it will sort of lapse into this thing. So each of these organizations have an important role. Then there's also power traders which will help in transporting power जहाँ surplus है to another place जहाँ deficit है. So these power trading also started with Power Trading Corporation, which was a joint venture subsidiary of 3-4 public sector companies: NTPC, NHPC, Power Finance Corporation, and Power Grid. So these people started this organization because what we started initially was regional development on regional basis. So northern, southern, eastern, western, and northeastern. Now क्या हुआ कि eastern region has a lot of coal belts. तो वहाँ पे power stations बहुत आ गए. And southern region, the development of generation didn't take place. So when now you had surplus power in eastern region, and people of course thought that many industries will come up in eastern region जो नहीं आई, and southern region में industries थी, western में industries थी, northern में थी. So they had so much excess power in eastern region कि the balance between generation and load is the operating frequency. If the two are balanced, then it's 50 hertz. If generation is more than load, then frequency goes above 50. If generation is less than load, it goes below 50. So eastern region में frequency was operating even after backing down generation to certain levels which was allowed. The frequency used to be 51 instead of 50. And in southern region conversely, it used to be on 48.5, much below that. So a lot of under frequency load shedding used to take place in the southern region. A lot of disruptions in the southern region grid. So CA thought, and the Ministry of Power thought, that how do we transport this power from here to here? So through CA, which did some modalities of a nominal transmission loss, transmission charge, and through the existing transmission system, which was limited between regions, power flowed to southern region from Orissa or West Bengal went to Kerala, then Tamil Nadu, because all these were suffering shortages. And then of course it was thought कि CA कर रहा है as an additional thing, वो चीफ मिनिस्टर से बात करके, पावर मिनिस्टर से बात करके स्टेट्स में करते थे. तो इनफॉर्मल तरीका था. देन ऑल्सो द इशू केम अप कि सपोज उसने प्लेज किया कि मैं 100 मेगावाट दूंगा और उसने नहीं दिया, देन व्हाट डू यू डू? एंड दूसरी तरफ जो ले रहा है 100 मेगावाट, उसने ले रहा था लेकिन नहीं दिया. हु इज द लायबिलिटी? वेयर विल द लायबिलिटीज? बिकॉज दे हैड कमिटेड समथिंग. देयर वाज नो कमिटमेंट चार्ज थी, तो वो भी. So then it was thought that there should be formal agreements between this, and instead of doing everything, let a power trading company, which is Power Trading Corporation, which was formed by the joint ventures of these public sector undertakings, they should do this. They should have back-to-back agreements with the seller and the buyer at this side. So they make sure that everybody complies, and there should be penalty for people who don't comply. So that's how power trading was created. And that helped a lot because then much more power started getting transferred. And now, of course, when the new Electricity Act came in 2003, the power trading was identified as an independent activity. And usme now there are about almost 40 registered traders with the CRC, Central Electricity Commission. So it has really taken off and it's helped. It has made, जहाँ surplus use नहीं हो रही, क्या फायदा? जहाँ deficit है वो पहुँच नहीं पा रही. So these power traders facilitated that. So it was a win-win situation. And now the same thing we are planning to do for countries in South Asia, where also power traders are helping in transfer of power. I remember northern region में Nepal में the MD, we were doing some capacity building for them as under the USAID program. So we said you can ask any questions. At that time, the MD of Nepal Electricity Authority, that was in July sometime. He had lines on his forehead because बहुत बारिश थी. They had a lot of, because it's totally hydro mainly, Nepal and Bhutan.
हाइड्रो है वहाँ.
तो spill कर रहा था पानी and they were not able to export to India. India में shortage, मतलब they needed power. So we thought that it's a win-win situation. जब उनके पास extra पानी है जो उनको नहीं चाहिए और extra electricity है, they can sell to other countries. And जब low inflow season होता है, which is in winter, when they need electricity, they can buy from India. So it was such a win-win situation that we told them that अगर आपके पास, even if you've got electricity for 15 minutes extra, वो भी waste क्यों जाए? It can be sold in the power exchange, because the power exchange allows you to sell or buy electricity even as little as 15 minutes, which जिसका use already India में was proved. So now when these people came in the power exchange, they found it very good. They started getting a huge amount of money, because that's a time जब उनके पास surplus electricity होती है, से मई से लेके सितंबर तक इंडिया का ऑलमोस्ट पीक डिमांड होता है उस टाइम. समर्स और जब बारिश नहीं हो तो फिर इट बिकम्स इवन हायर. So it's a win-win situation. They are selling when we want, and in winter when they don't have, they can. हमारा demand peak इसी time होता है, not in winter, so that India can afford to sell electricity to these countries during time when we have less demand. So not only that, now Bangladesh also, we as a policy, the Prime Minister announced that we will give you so much power. And then पहले तो line नहीं होती थी. Then HVDC line was created in 2013, which is of 1000 megawatts. So पूरा 1000 megawatts almost 1000 megawatts जा रहा है बांग्लादेश के लिए. And Bangladesh was suffering at that time 15% shortage. और उनके textile industry was not getting enough power, and so they had to use costly diesel power engine. The moment this power started coming to India, because we met all these countries, the government officials of all these countries, and they said that our shortage is reduced to nil now after this power came from India. And there it had started having the highest growth rate in one of the highest growth rates in the world, 8%, even more than India, because they started getting electricity. Textile industry started flourishing. So and हमारे stranded जो power थी, that started getting utilized, because हमारे पास उस time stranded power थी. So I think there's so much of benefit in trading of power. So now we are thinking of. So I mean, these are aspects which common man may not know or may not get to because this is background. It happens. It happens in the background. So, but there's the Prime Minister's vision of one sun, one world, one grid. जहाँ पे solar energy हमारे India में भी curtail हो रही थी, was not getting used, so it was getting curtailed at sometimes, not every time. Now that power which would have got curtailed can be sold to other countries. Similarly, जो उनका hydro water was being spilled without generating, that can generate and go to other countries. So there's also now, this is actually in line with the vision of one sun, one world, one grid by the Prime Minister, where we not only connect South Asia but connect the entire world.
So we spoke about energy access, and how energy access as part of the Look East policy. So we're looking at providing access to other countries and optimizing the resources available globally. But I think there's also a question of energy access inside the country. And I think the government is also working proactively towards ensuring energy access for the residents of the country itself. I mean, that is still, I would say, I do not know whether we still have 100% coverage as far as access is concerned. So as far as the journey as a nation that we have traveled over the last 75 years or so in the power sector, so how do you see, the journey that we've made, and is there a country are there global practices that we would want to emulate or follow as far as the power sector reforms are concerned?
So, just for information, the energy access to the extent of 99.99% was achieved in 2019, where every household was connected. So, energy access ka hai. It's a question of capability to pay. So, if you see villages, mein earlier when they didn't have electricity, they were charged a flat rate per month. तो उसमें bulb और fan इतना ही था. No, but now they have they can get more energy. The infrastructure has been strengthened to carry more power. लेकिन it's the capability to pay. अगर उनके पास, I mean, if maybe they don't have so much capacity to pay जैसे cities में होता है, they can't afford air conditioners because it's too expensive, the electricity. So it's that commercial side which is limiting them. Of course, the government has taken care to see that the underprivileged people are provided subsidy in electricity or cross subsidy. Actually, most of this is done at the state level. So it's the state's policies which hold, and most of it is cross subsidy. Where they charge higher for industrial consumers and they charge low for agriculture and residential consumers. Industries and commercial is higher. So what we had suggested in the policy was, and which is also the Niti Aayog document, that you replace cross subsidy with direct subsidy. अगर government को किसी को help करना है तो direct पैसे उसके account में डाले, just like this done for gas subsidy. Instead of doing this, because it distorts competition. हम लोग make in India की बात करते हैं, but if we'll be disadvantaged if we charge very high to industrial consumers, जो कि बाकी countries में नहीं हो रहा charge. In some other countries, the industrial tariff is cheaper than residential tariff. So naturally, we can't compete internationally with them. The industries have to pay high here. So this is one of the suggestions, but it's basically the states who have to implement it. They can actually charge a little bit more if they want to take care के subsidy कहाँ से दें. तो थोड़ा सा सभी के लिए पैसा बढ़ा दें. Maybe even if they increase 1 or 2 paisa per unit, that will have a kitty, over there, which they can use for giving direct subsidy to the underprivileged consumers, and then therefore they can buy more. There is a method of doing this. It's only thing is, it's to be implemented by states, and there is, center cannot enforce that because of the it's a concurrent subject, electricity, and जिसमें के दोनों की powers हैं, and for the distribution side, it is powers are with the state. Yeah. So hopefully people understand this, and even the states will benefit because उसमें अगर industries आएंगे state में because of lower tariff, तो state will benefit because की economy उनकी GDP बढ़ेगी. Anyway, this is something which is an ongoing exercise, and hopefully I think now states are understanding that elections, results are linked to people who improve infrastructure. So infrastructure अगर improve करेंगे, बिजली रहेगी 24 घंटे, तो people will vote for them. People now don't get fooled by just some benefits थोड़ा दे दिया for getting votes and then not. So I don't know if you heard of that, but झारखंड में हुआ था कि रांची में एक बार, because it was so bad, the electricity supply at one time, this is about 6-7 years back or 8 years back, the people beat up the state electricity board officials because they were not giving proper supply. Frequent tha. So overnight the regulator had to say that we have to have a franchisee model. We have to have privatization. You cannot. These people are not able to do that. I think everybody is understanding. It's a basic need. Electricity is a basic need. और अगर आप नहीं सप्लाई करेंगे किसी स्टेट में, तो it's going to result in people being dissatisfied.
But there's another topic that you touched upon, energy access, and then you spoke about power availability 24/7.
Yeah.
You may have access to power,
Right.
but the question is also, what is the availability of power on a round-the-clock basis when we look at a national level? And I mean, is it at a level that we would, be satisfied with, or is there a way to go?
Power availability since the last about 2012 to 17 time mein, we had a huge almost 100,000 megawatts of new capacity installed because of the power market which came. So many people thought that हम लोग सेटअप करके जनरेटिंग स्टेशंस पावर एक्सचेंज में बेचेंगे, बिकॉज पावर एक्सचेंज की बिजली in 2008 when this power exchange came, उस टाइम it used to be about 6-7 rupees per unit, जबकि long term contracts खाली 3 रुपए के होते थे per unit. So many people thought they'll set up generating stations only to sell in the power exchange. And the people who were the newcomers into this who came did sell and made a lot of profit which they wouldn't have made for 25 years. लेकिन अब सब अगर आ जाएंगे ऐसे तो फ्रॉम अ पोजीशन ऑफ डेफिसिट बिकेम अ सरप्लस. जब सरप्लस होगा तो मार्केट रिफ्लेक्ट सरप्लस, तो then the power exchange prices came down to the same level as long term, and उससे भी कम हो गए. तो then these people couldn't repay the banks because they'd taken loan from the banks. तभी non performing assets हो गए. So that was 30,000 megawatts at one time. अभी कम हो गई है because now demand has picked up, and not so much of thermal stations have come up. That at one time even thermal stations which planned to come up didn't come up because they felt that we'll get stuck in this because we won't get money. So now things have improved, and also because they are now able to sell electricity across the border. So some of that electricity is getting used there, and new electric vehicles का जो आ रहा है, that will also consume more electricity. And there's also thought of electric cooking, which will again consume electricity. जो पहले gas use करते थे, अब they'll start using electricity. I mean, there is a thrust towards that. Transition, yeah, energy transition में. It's also cleaner cooking. So electricity तो है, उस time भी थी. The problem used to be, for example, एक time होता था कि बिहार में it used to show a shortage of about 10% or 15%, जबकि बिजली excess थी grid में. Because there was a constraint in the distribution system. Distribution system भी strengthen करना पड़ेगा अगर power ज़्यादा ले जानी है. तो problem वहाँ पे थी, not in the availability of power. Availability अभी भी standard capacity है, generating capacity इंडिया में. We can still generate at even the plant load factor जो आजकल operate कर रहा है in thermal stations is around 60%. So there is a possibility of taking it to 85. इतना margin हमारे पास, बहुत surplus है. It's not that we don't have electricity. It's just that making policies and to see that gets used to the extent it can. And cross-border trade is one outlet, and also make in India and transition to electric EV, electric vehicles, and e-cooking. These are things where demand can pick up. And so the plant load factor of these thermal generating stations will improve. I think that is what. But of course, many people say that अब renewable ज़्यादा आ रही है. So renewable ज़्यादा आने से when the renewable solar, for example, is there for 10 hours, बाकी नहीं होती, तो उसको demand meet करने के लिए thermal stations pick up. So इसलिए भी उनका plant load कम utilization during the day. It's solar mainly. So there are, as I said, so you either have storage, energy storage, which will store this excess energy of solar and give it back to the grid during the time when solar is not there, or you have demand response. So that demand response is something where policy में आ गया है, regulations में आ गया है, interstate regulations में, but those interstate regulations have where the state has to some demand to states में ही है. Consumers are in the states, industries and this thing are part of the states. So in order for them to for this thing to be success, they have to bring these regulations at the state level, because यहीं से आएगा सब जो demand response है. I take electricity from Dakshin Haryana Bijli Vidyut Nigam. So अगर हरियाणा में framework ही नहीं है इसका demand response का, तो I can't do it because it's not there. So at a overall level it's there, but it's not translated into ground level, जहाँ से आना है.
सर्टनली आई थिंक ट्रांसमिशन में तो इंडिया में बहुत सारे बेस्ट एग्जांपल्स हैं. जो मेंशन कि नई टेक्नोलॉजीज में हम लोग काफ़ी आगे हैं. एंड विल सर्टनली कम बैक टू द क्वालिटी पावर सप्लाई इन द डोमेस्टिक मार्केट थोड़ा सा समय के बाद में. पहले हम लोग ये भी हम बात कर लेते हैं, जैसे आपने काफ़ी बार इसको यूज़ किया है कि हम लोग जो रीजनल लेवल पे जो हम लोग पावर ट्रेडिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, या जैसे आपने सारी प्रोग्राम को आपने हेड किया, उसमें भी बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस विच वी अंडरस्टैंड.
Yes, there are challenges. There have been challenges. But if you understand the psychology of people or of a nation, then you can overcome them. For example, now if you do theoretical things, tell them that this is. I mean, you don't tell them as at the level of how they stand to gain. Then things may not move. So. We took people from India, people who actually run the power exchange, people who actually trade in power, because they don't have most of the South Asian countries don't have competition, and they don't have the concept of trader as well as power exchange. So you need to bring them to that level where they understand the logic and the benefits of these. And so we took people from the Indian Energy Exchange, which is the largest predominant power exchange in India, as well as power traders, and we brought those people here. They, in fact, Nepal didn't have a regulator also. They started having a regulator 2021, I think, power regulator. And Bangladesh Regulatory Commission regulator was there. Bhutan was there, but they were not doing too much. So you have, when you have competition, you have to have a regulator also. So they are learning gradually from our things. We also brought them to India to see, to visit the site, Indian Energy Exchange. Then we, as well as power trader, as well as system operator, how they operate, because all these are specialist organizations which people learn from when they actually meet and ask questions and see. So it's bringing them to the level where they understand this well. And so we told them, that one of the basic things in simple terms is that अगर आपके पास बिजली है 15 मिनट के लिए और आप नहीं यूज कर रहे तो बेच दो, कुछ तो पैसा मिलेगा. एंड इट्स अ ह्यूज अमाउंट. 15 मिनट इफ यू टेक इन, दिस कम्स इन मिलियंस ऑफ यूनिट्स. तो एक अगर 4-5 रुपए या 6 रुपए है, तो यू गेट अ लॉट ऑफ मनी. So the moment Nepal started selling in the power exchange, there is a news item, it made so much billion Nepali rupees because of sale to India. तो जो कि कुछ भी नहीं मिल रहा था, because it was just getting spilled without generating. So it's just getting people, I mean, harmonizing of, also number of studies were done on harmonizing of policies, regulations. So India may be telling them that this is what it is. Then they also started making policies and laws which are aligned with this, and also in certain cases taking specific approvals from the cabinet about being able to trade. अगर regulations, laws नहीं थे, तो एक cabinet से approval ले लिया कि we can buy and sell in the power exchange, that sort of thing. So I think that these are things where they have to start feeling that they'll benefit. जब तक उनको feeling नहीं आएगी, they will not do it. And we have to explain in simple terms. That's what we did. We explained to them in simple terms, and of course, different levels. We met people from the ministry, from the regulatory commission, from the utilities, which means the generation, transmission, distribution, the system operator. So at different levels, you talk at different levels of people or different levels of understanding. You talk at different levels, so that they appreciate what you're saying. So it's just getting to know the, what is required of any human being. It's a human sort of thing. It's a human thing. It's not that there's no magic in that. It's just to understand that they understand what you're saying, and they appreciate the benefits of that. तो होगा, तो हुआ फिर. That's why the trade doubled in 6 years for the South Asian countries. Now Sri Lanka से इतने 10 साल से भी ज़्यादा से they were thinking of having an interconnection, and now they have agreed after this because they feel that there is a benefit. There's a huge benefit. उनके northern part of Sri Lanka, there's a lot of wind potential, but many times it's not used because उनके demand नहीं रहती. अब वो पावर अगर इंडिया को बेच देते या थ्रू इंडिया टू एनी अदर साउथ एशियन कंट्री, तो दे वुड हैव मेड मनी, एंड दैट जिसको चाहिए थी उसको भी डिमांड सेटिस्फाई हो जाता. सो सिमिलरली व्हेन दे आर इन शॉर्टेज, देन आई मीन वन इज दैट दे act be on by themselves and then put energy storage. Energy storage is very expensive, so this will reduce the need of energy storage if you interconnect. In fact, if you interconnect the whole world, you may not need any energy storage, or hardly any, very less. So there's merit in lot of merit in what the policy or the thrust of one sun, one world, one grid. The same thing was adopted between Indian Prime Minister and the British Prime Minister, one of the COPs, where they took out the Green Grid Initiative, which means again same thing, interconnecting the whole grid and any power being traded, not necessarily only solar power. So because demands के times अलग-अलग रहते हैं, तो अभी the problem with electricity is अगर product होता, like cars होती या appliances होती, अगर नहीं इसको आप store कर लो, you can't store electricity to such a large extent. It becomes hugely expensive. It has to be used mostly at the time of generation. I mean, the storage would require a huge amount of money if you have large scale storage in thousands of megawatts. So it's that's the curious thing about electricity.
Isme sir, you spoke about how power trading between nations helps both. So typically these are bilateral contracts between two nations, and so it will be also interesting to know how these contracts are secured typically. For example, I sell power to a nation, so how do I secure this contract? And typically, I mean, referring to Anurag's question and what's happening, so I'm also curious to understand how these contracts can be secured or are secured at the moment.
They're normally given priority, but in your case you are right that when a thing like Bangladesh happens, where you don't foresee that is going to happen. But in this case, maybe if you read the papers recently, they've started paying Adani first. Now, every day they are paying something. Or you write $500 million was what was the outstanding to be paid. So now they've started paying because these countries, economics matters actually more than anything else. So अगर उनके economics में it works out for that country, अगर उनके पास, so they examine the position जब अगर नहीं होगी power, then they have to either use costly fuel oil, which is expensive, which is higher cost of generation, and somebody has to foot the bill, na there. So वो नहीं, this is a cheaper source, तो यहाँ से if you have to pay there, you have to pay here. Better to pay a cheaper amount here. So even the other, so Europe is the thing which got interconnected the first, between countries. Started as long back as just after World War I, 2020. 6 countries got together for primarily with using power from Alps, electricity from rivers which are from the Alps. Then of course it kept on adding, and so this was driven initially by the technical people themselves. So they drive it because they find that अगर हमारा ट्रिप होता है कोई यूनिट्स, अगर कोई दूसरे कंट्री से कनेक्टेड होते हैं, वहाँ से मिल जाती है हमको पावर, द ग्रिड बिकम्स मोर स्टेबल. So if they moved the case like that to the political level, and political level agreed, तो छः countries हुई, फिर और बढ़ती गई. There were many organizations which were in different countries. Baltic countries का अलग था, ये वाला जो Nordic countries का अलग वो था association. Now all these have got combined into one in the year 2009. 2009 में इतने साल से जो चल रहा था, it's got organized now into about 40 countries now of Europe, which are where and everybody is actually benefiting from that. Everybody is benefiting. Nobody loses in this, because when you share, your average cost of supply reduces, your reliability of grid increases. So it's जहाँ इनके अगर बीच में fights भी होती हैं European countries में, but still the grid carries on. So it's not that things get disrupted. So इस केस में भी ऐसे ही होगा. Just a blip हुआ है when it just started, but if you see that Adani has said that we'll continue to supply to you, and therefore now they started payment also. Now the next steps will be जो बाकी private companies कर रही हैं, धीरे धीरे उनका भी पैसे मिलने शुरू होगा. Of course, the government of India has made an arrangement, has made an amendment in the cross-border guidelines कि अगर आप कुछ disruption होता है नहीं बेच पाए तो you can sell in the domestic market also. But I'm saying that these are things, if it works, even if you have enmity with another nation, trade still goes on. China से अभी भी हमारा trade है, बहुत सारी चीज़ों में है, पाकिस्तान से भी है on certain commodities. So these things don't get disrupted.
Very nice है. Questions और भी हैं, पहले एक छोटा सा rapid fire round करते हैं.
Sure.
कोई recently hobby जो आपने अभी recently maybe adopt की हो?
नहीं, recently तो कोई नई hobby नहीं है. I just like to meet a lot of people and get their viewpoints, because it's not only our culture but दूसरे countries के cultures also. We recently went to Japan and Korea because I wanted to see their culture. उनके, because they're a little different, Japanese and Korean, South Korea. I also want to go sometime to Israel, not now, but some other time, and also cultures of Russia and some of these countries which are supposed to be one of the happiest nations, I think, in the world is Sweden, and Finland is also. So वो भी कभी जाके go and see that. It's good to understand. I just like to understand people's minds. Everything has got a reason. Nothing goes without reason. कुछ I also like to go to South America and Africa sometime. Let's see when that's possible. Yeah, I hope to make one trip each year somewhere.
Very nice.
And I mean, India में तो बहुत सारे. I've already, because we worked in a cosmopolitan place. I've stayed in Mumbai. I've stayed in Delhi. I've studied in Varanasi, where you have people from south, north, west, east, everyone coming over there. So I've understood the cultures mainly from these states, but I'd like to understand even wider than this.
Sir, अगर energy sector में आप नहीं होते तो फिर what is the alternate sector that you would have picked up?
I leave it to destiny. ले आए तो आ गए. नहीं होता मेरे को नहीं पता. I don't have anything that मेरे को इधर जाना ही था. Actually, electrical engineering was something which I wanted to go to mechanical when I gave the joint entrance exam of IIT. So I didn't get mechanical. It was higher ranked because mechanical चीजें आप देख सकते हो, आपको you feel more at home. Electricity is, it's something in the air. AC waves कैसे चलती हैं, कैसे, I mean it's difficult to understand the equations and things like that which you need to understand. तो I didn't feel comfortable, but I was forcibly this thing. But यहाँ पे आके सीख लिया है, कभी काफी कुछ सीखा है, and I feel that things can be made simple in teaching methods. जो angular instability होती है, I can now explain in simple terms what that is, because I've come into this and I've understood how it is done. It's just that I just got into this. That's all. Yeah.
Is teaching also something that you do?
Yeah, I do that. I used to take lectures in NPTI, National Power Training Institute. I've also taken classes in MDI, है ना, Management Development Institute, Gurgaon. Yeah, so I've taken some lectures. The energy management का course उन्होंने किया था, तो I was taking lectures there, and a lot of workshops and conferences and things like as I speak on. So.
और recent कोई book आपने अभी पढ़ी हो?
I don't have a hobby of reading books. So,
writing books.
Not writing books. Also writing articles. Yes, I've written a lot of articles in Powerline, in ET Energy, infrastructure. There's one infrastructure magazine, I think. So I've written in those. So maybe I don't have the patience to write such big books, long books. But I like to write, disseminate knowledge, जो कि universally फायदा हो लोगों को.
Very nice.
So articles देखे मैंने काफी. And
also आपने environment का नाम लिया तो जैसे climate resilience का is a very important aspect. तो जब हम लोग इस तरह के infrastructure की बात करते हैं, transmission, distribution और इतने सारे जो transformers ये सब चीज़ें, तो जब हम लोग climate resilience as a subject देखते हैं with respect to the maybe frequency of these occurrences जो कि अभी ज़्यादा होने लगी हैं compared to 10 years or 20 years back, तो जैसे आपने फ्लड एकदम से बढ़ गए, फिर टेम्परेचर बढ़ गया, तो इसका इम्पैक्ट इस तरह के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे भी है. हमने स्टडी किया है सर.
बिल्कुल है. सो वी डिड, एक तो जो ट्रांसमिशन टावर्स इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं, बनाते हैं, दैट्स बेस्ड ऑन विंड जोन्स. द होल कंट्री इज डिवाइडेड टू विंड जोन्स. So now those wind zones have been changing because of the higher wind speeds. So there was a program where strengthening of the towers had to be done, because otherwise wind zone जो पहले 4 था has become wind zone 5.
Right.
ऐसे so they have there was a program where this was allowed by the CRC for as a cost for strengthening the members of the towers. ये किया है. That's one resilience. And the other thing is in distribution system बहुत सारे underground cables करते हैं. So जो distribution system पहले overhead होता था वो storm से या पेड़ से या गिर जाता था या then it would have shorted. But now many of these, for example Gurgaon is now a smart city. वहाँ पे न्यू गुड़गांव में सारे cables underground करती हैं. So now पहले क्या होता था कि when these distribution system जब भी कोई आंधी आती ना, लोग अपने डीएच डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन वाले अपने आप ही बंद कर देते बिकॉज दे सेल के ये इससे पहले कि कोई फॉल्ट हो पहले ही ऑफ कर देते हैं और फिर चार्ज करके देखेंगे. तो अब ये नहीं करते बिकॉज नाउ इट्स अंडरग्राउंड. नाउ हवा आती है तो कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता.
सप्लाई उनकी अब मजबूरी बन गई है.
हाँ, अब इट्स रिलायबल. जितनी भी हवा है तो कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता. सो दैट्स वन ऑफ द थिंग्स, दैट्स अ रेजिलियंस, मीटिंग विद changing environment, उसको कैसे डील करना. And also yes, there are many more things which can be done in resilience. I will have to think of some things, but हम लोग बोलते हैं कि climate change को prevent करो, वो तो ठीक है, fine. But जो already हम suffer कर रहे हैं, how to see that we utilize the existing thing. For example, there's some innovation in developed countries where you have the wind speed बढ़ रही है. So you have wind generators which can tolerate higher speeds. अभी एक particular speed से high होती है, they have to shut it off because it's mechanically going to cause a problem. But if you have make it for materials which are different, which can you'll actually make use of the higher wind speeds for generating more power.
सर आप नीति आयोग के भी एक्सपर्ट ग्रुप में हैं, and then maybe you are a part of one report which is talking about maybe I think future energy
vision
2035.
35, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you see the preparedness of India in terms of meeting the energy demand going forward? क्योंकि वो demand तो multifold हो जाएगी.
Yeah, so the basis of that was, so this is energy vision. They had visions for many other industries. So I know only about the energy vision because I was there. इसमें the premise is by 2047 we'll become a prosperous nation, which means a developed nation. That's the uske basis pe these things have been worked out. The energy consumption and in industries and in residential per capita energy consumption. So they've talked about many things. The energy transition is one. They also talked about hydrogen in that, for which there was a separate hydrogen mission. So there are a number of things, because inputs have come from there. I think 10 experts in that. So I'm one of them, and there are others, many others. So everybody is given inputs for that. So it talks of various things about electric vehicles, electric cooking, about so concept यही है that they talk about hydrogen. So combination of many, and renewables, transition to renewables. Coal transition slowly from coal based to having more efficient technologies in generation also. Even if it's thermal, then having more efficient technologies in coal based stations. So that it considers a lot of things. The objective is to give energy access to all at an affordable rate, and sustainable power. So there are four objectives which are there.
Very nice.
So the whole report works at that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pankaj sir, for sharing a lot of information with us. I'm sure like such information will certainly help a lot of listeners in terms of gaining a lot of knowledge about the energy sector. Domestic market, you mentioned international or regional market, you mentioned how the energy demands will be met from such strategic moves. बहुत धन्यवाद आपका. Thank you so much Dhruv for pitching in and sharing a lot of questions and relevant information with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.